All right, let's dive right in. We are talking about a massive high-stakes race for AI dominance. And you know what? The rules of the game just got completely flipped on their head. We're looking at the agentic AI space, where the giants just made a move that changes everything for the smaller players out there. So let's get into it.
And this image, this one right here from our source material, it just perfectly captures our theme for today, combine and conquer. A brand new race is kicked off, and the major players are seriously scaling up their game, moving right into the agentic space. Which of course leaves us with one huge question: how can the smaller startups even begin to compete?
Now, hold on. Before we get any deeper, let's make sure we're all on the same page here. What exactly is Agentic AI? Well, to put it simply, these aren't your basic one-and-done command AIs. No, these systems can proactively and, more importantly, autonomously handle really complex multi-step jobs from the very beginning all the way to the end. We're talking planning, executing, the whole shebang. You can kind of think of them as an AI project manager that you can assign to your tasks.
So here's the game plan for this explainer. First, we're going to look at this new AI arms race. Then we'll break down the playbook the giants are using. After that, we'll get into the tough spot this puts the smaller disruptors in and look at their strategies for survival. And finally, we're going to map out the entire battlefield. It's a lot to cover, so let's jump in. Okay, first up, the new AI arms race. The really key thing to get here is that the whole competitive landscape has just shifted, like dramatically. The giants didn't just decide to join the race, they basically moved the finish line by going up the stack. And what that means is they started building the very applications and tools that were sitting on top of their own core tech.
And the two players forcing everyone else to react? Well, it's probably no surprise. OpenAI and Google. The moves they've just made have sent shockwaves through the entire AI ecosystem, and it's forcing literally every other company to go back to the drawing board and rethink their strategy.
So, how'd they pull this off? Well, that leads us to our next section, the Giants Playbook. Look, this wasn't just some random decision. It was a very deliberate two-phase plan. Step 1, build the foundations. Step 2, build the wrappers. All the user-friendly apps that sit right on top of those foundations. And this quote from our source material absolutely nails phase 1. It was all about creating their own powerful proprietary models. Think about the tech that powers ChatGPT and Gemini. They built the core engine, right? The fundamental technology that everything else was going to be built on. And this just brilliantly illustrates phase 2. With those foundations locked in, both OpenAI and Google launched their own app platforms. You've got OpenAI with its apps in ChatGPT, and Google right behind them with apps in Gemini. And make no mistake, these are not just simple features. These are entire ecosystems designed to let developers build specialized AI agents right there on their turf. And the goal? It's pretty clear. Lock in users, lock in developers, and make their models the absolute center of the AI universe. So, this brings us to the real heart of the conflict, the disruptor's dilemma. What we have here is a classic, almost ironic case of the incumbents, the big, established players, turning the tables and disrupting the very startups that were trying to disrupt them. Which leads to the million-dollar question, where does this leave the startups? I mean, think about it. So many of these smaller companies built their entire business model on creating useful, clever tools that sat on top of models from OpenAI or Google. But now, the owners of the platforms are building those exact same tools themselves. And that means these startups are suddenly fighting a war on two fronts. First, they're facing direct competition on their home turf from the very companies whose technology they depend on. Ouch. And second, because the giants are just absorbing all these functions, the startup's total addressable market, their pool of potential customers, is just getting smaller and smaller. It's a classic squeeze play. But, it's not all doom and gloom. This actually brings us to a more hopeful section, strategies for survival. Because even in this new, pretty hostile landscape, there are still some very clear paths for how the smaller, more agile players can still carve out their own space and actually win. Our source material lays out 3 main strategies here. First, avoid lock-in. So instead of tying your service to just one specific model, you offer flexibility. A great example is using a model like Anthropic's Claude for a specific task like coding. You give your customers a choice. Second strategy, differentiate. This means building agentic tools for very specific industries, think legal or finance, with built-in compliance and security that the big guys just can't match. And third, niche down. Go super deep serving a few specific enterprise clients and offer them the things the giants can't, like total data transparency, way better security, and that hands-on expert support. Okay, so now that we understand the strategies in play, let's zoom all the way out and actually map the entire battlefield. This is going to help us see where all these different companies and strategies fit into the much bigger AI and machine learning landscape.
Now, I'm going to warn you, at first glance, this map can look, well, pretty overwhelming. It is a really complex ecosystem with just a ton of players. But don't worry, stick with me. We're going to break it down into simple, easy-to-understand layers.
Let's deconstruct this whole thing. So right at the bottom, you've got the infrastructure and DevOps layer. That's basically the plumbing of the AI world. Right on top of that, you have core AI, which includes things like natural language processing and computer vision. Above that is the red-hot generative AI space with all the models and agents. And then supporting all of it, you've got data and tooling. And finally, right at the very top, you have all the AI-powered applications that we, as end users, actually interact with. You see? Seeing it layered like this really helps make sense of where all the different battles are being fought.
So that brings us to the end of part 1 of this analysis. We've seen the giants make this incredibly powerful combine and conquer move, and it's putting immense pressure on all the disruptors. We've also seen the strategies they can use to survive. But it all really leads to this one final question. In this high-stakes game of AI chess, what's the next move? We'll definitely be watching closely. Thanks for joining me.